Welcome back to Conversations, and you're in for a treat for this episode because we have one of our deacons from the Archdiocese, Deacon Stephen Bowling, who is now the new director of our Family Life Ministries for a special interview. So, Deacon Stephen, thank you and welcome to Conversations.
Thanks, Archbishop.
Before we get talking a little bit, let me tell our viewing audience a little bit about yourself. You and your wife, Susan, and I believe three children. Are very active parishioners at St. Gabriel Parish. I know that you hail from Nelson County.
I do.
From St. Catherine's Parish down in New Haven.
Proudly so.
And we're grateful for that. And we're especially grateful for the fact that you've served as a deacon and now are serving as the diocesan director for Family Life Ministries. It seems to me that that's a great connection. You're a deacon, you're married, you have a family, and you're being drawn to a ministry that is so central to the life of the church. Tell me a little bit and tell all of us what attracted you to this ministry within the church.
You're absolutely right. It seems like a very natural progression.
Right.
A lot of it started really 15 years ago when our youngest son, Thomas, was born. We went through baptism preparation. And it was at that moment, and it was one of those moments of personal invitation, where after we went through the program, we were asked, wouldn't you like to do this? And my wife and I looked at each other, and all of a sudden the Holy Spirit says, yes, you would. And from that moment forward, we began teaching baptism and encountered at St. Gabriel, we'll baptize over 60 babies every year. Wow. So there was a lot of personal experience with so many families.
So really for a decade and a half,
yes,
you and your wife Susan have been very much involved in that ministry, so important with baptismal preparation.
Very much so, and we still are, yes. Wow. And it's from that my diaconal call I was able to discern. It really started with that baptism, that one baptism.
Wonderful.
And from there, when we went through diaconal formation, I was ordained by you in 2008.
Right. By the way, I remember that.
Yeah.
And I was very, very happy for your ordination.
Very much so. It was, that was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, everything I touch always had family as part of the equation, whether it be marriage preparation, St. Vincent de Paul, which works with so many needy families of whatever configuration they might be, all throughout the Fern Creek, Highview area where I minister. So it seems like a natural progression to just take it a little larger.
In many ways, when I just came back from the Synod just about a month ago, and in that process of the Synod work that we did on the family, we talked about accompanying families. And families come in all shapes and sizes and have all different needs. But it seems to me that one point in which you accompany at the time of a baptism, a time when especially if it's the first child, when a mom and dad, at least when I was a pastor, would say, we need all the help we can get. We would love to hear about the church. Now, I also know that about 2 months ago, a little less than that, you had the privilege to travel to Philadelphia for the World Meeting of Families. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Oh, it was when the Holy Spirit is present, it reminded me a lot, thinking afterwards, it was like Pentecost. There were people there of over 18,000 people, 100 different countries.
It was a record, by the way.
Oh, really?
I'm not surprised. It was the most that came to a World Meeting of Families ever. So that was wonderful.
100 countries, I don't know how many languages, but yet it was kind of like the upper room when the Holy Spirit came. It was a driving wind of energy that was there with us, and we all, even if we didn't speak the same language, were able to connect.
Yeah. So you went to different conferences and I guess Mass and
absolutely
and
Mass every day that we had with 10 cardinals, 80 bishops, and I don't know how many priests and deacons, and 18,000 people, and it was beautiful.
Wow.
The Spirit was very much alive with that, and liturgy was very much central. It was the beginning of every day that we had there.
I was walking with our Holy Father, of course, when he came on Tuesday, and we didn't get to Philadelphia until Saturday when everything was coming together. But I could feel the enthusiasm of the people, and especially at the Saturday night. I think you may have had had to leave.
I did.
So I kind of made second shift. I think when you went home, I arrived and was there for the final days. Well, you know, your head must be spinning now, because with all the experience that you had emotionally and really affecting the heart and soul, huh? Mm-hmm. But also, it's a time to begin at least to think, well, what is it from that experience of the family that you can bring back here to the Archdiocese of Louisville, and in a way to help families throughout our Archdiocese? Have you begun to think initially about some of the things you bring home with you?
Yes, it's and you've alluded to it already. It's finding the people where they're at. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I discovered at the World Meeting of Families is no matter where the family is, no matter what configuration it may be, they're all seeking. They're all seeking something. It may be comfort, it may be belonging, it may be instruction, it may simply be understanding the gospel. Mm-hmm. Every family has a seeking component to them that's basic to what they are. And how do we reach out to that? How do we go and find them and walk with them on this quest for whatever it might be? Yeah. Needs are always different, but the seeking and the searching is always there.
No, that's great. And you know, in some ways, coming back from the Synod, one of the insights I think that came from our Holy Father and from the Synod is that the family is not simply an object receiving help. That's right. But actually is a subject. They're philosophical terms, but I think we all know a subject gives, a subject shares. Mm-hmm. And so perhaps families don't realize that even as they're seeking, in a sense, to understand and to be supported with their family challenges, that at that very time they have the capacity to inspire others, don't they?
Absolutely. It's every family, no matter what their challenges are, is an inspiration to others, even if how they manage through suffering. And this is at every point of the curve. This is not just those in the newness of marriage, but it's those that have been married for 60 and 70 years and their extended families, their step families, all the many configurations that they all have something both that they're seeking and that they're giving.
Yeah. You know where I see that, Stephen, Deacon Stephen? I see it, first of all, when we have the marriage, the wedding anniversary masses,
which is coming up,
and people come, and people who are coming for that wonderful experience. And then, secondly, when I meet with people who go through retrovi, who themselves have had family problems, and yet with God's grace and with the help of others, they help one another to restore that original gift of marriage in their lives, and just their goodness radiates from them. We only have a minute or so left for this interview, but we would love to hear from you. What inspires you when you get up in the morning and you begin your work each day? What is it that inspires you to continue to reach out and walk with and serve families throughout the Archdiocese?
It's knowing that the need is there. Mm-hmm. It's that pastoral sense, I think, that all good deacons should have, that knows that not only are people hurting at times, but they're also giving at times. And the domestic church is one of the greatest gifts that God has given to us. And it needs to be fostered. It needs to be celebrated. It needs to be shown for all the goodness and difficulties that it has. And knowing that I'm part of that is a powerful
that's
thing.
Great. That is great. We're almost near the end of time, but let me say a little commercial, because much of the work you do is supported by our Catholic Services Appeal. And so to you and to all of the staff with whom you work, we have a wonderful Family Ministries. And especially to the people who are making this possible, who are through their prayers and offerings able to help families help other families. Deacon Stephen, thank you so much for your presence, and thank you all for being part of this episode, and please stay tuned for the final episode of Conversations.